Welcome everyone to another episode of Your Lab Central. Today I'm joined by Steve Perry. Steve, would you like to tell our audience why they should be excited about our conversation today?
Well, I'm just honored to be on here, but it's exciting to get to share with, I love sharing with leaders and business owners and entrepreneurs who have answered the call to help make other people's lives better by leading them and put their family and their financial well-being at risk to start a business. And so I'm right in there with you. I'm excited to talk about all of that today. And so thanks for joining us.
So, should we start from your journey itself? I mean, rather than first talking about everybody, where did your purpose come from?
Yeah. Well, I would say, starting with my purpose, about 7 years ago, I developed kind of what I call, my stand, or not really a mission, but just my stand, like who I am. And that is that I am a bold and encouraging and generous follower of Jesus who will help fund billions to grow God's kingdom by leading others to live radically generous lives. And that was really a culmination of a lot of experiences and just kind of observing, what energizes me and what I felt God calling me to and all of those things. And so once I created that, that has helped drive a lot of the decisions that I made in my life. So I spent 17 years at a Fortune 100 company, ultimately in a corporate executive role as a managing partner, running a firm of 120, advisors and support staff. And, I looked up one day, and this is a couple of years ago, and I was like, man, they pay me almost $900,000 a year to run this firm, but it's their firm. And, their goal is to get me to do whatever they want, whatever their agenda is, and frankly, pay me as little as they possibly can to get me to do the job. And I got into business originally to own my own business. And so, it was not an easy decision, but my wife and I prayed a lot about it and really felt God calling us to step out in faith. And so, we left that. We sold our, what we thought was our dream home, right? Our $2 million lakefront house and all the fancy cars, and, moved into a rental home across town and started over and, chasing, and I wouldn't say chasing, right? Like most people would say chasing that dream of, being an entrepreneur. And I'll tell you what, it has been a dream. It's been amazing, but really I have what I think this vision of what the business looks like and what God has in store for us, but it's just step by step, day by day, steps of faith. And, so that's the journey that we're on right now. And there's a lot of things going on in that.
Yeah. You mentioned Jesus and faith, and I think that for a lot of people, it stems from there where they have faith in what they're doing. But would you say that your journey itself, was it a spiritual awakening, or was it more like, I want to do God's work?
Yeah.
That's all.
I think God is so kind. Like sometimes he can smack you on the head if that's what you need, and other times it's just gentle. I was fortunate to be raised in a household where my parents had faith, and I went to a Christian school, K through 12, that was the church we went to, and so that was, that has its advantages and disadvantages, right? The common knock is like, well, you're kind of sheltered from what the real world looks like. But the other side of that is, when you're young and impressionable, it gives you a lot of time to really formalize and format like what your belief system is, so that when you do get into the real world and it smacks you and it's cruel and mean and unforgiving, you have that to fall back on and to know. And frankly, and then at that point, you have to really wrestle with, do I believe what I believe? And so, for me, it's been my whole life. I'll share when I was in my early 30s, I reached levels of success that I never thought I would reach, financially, accolade wise, influence wise. And so it wasn't, and that was a blessing in the sense that I got to realize how empty it was. And it was subsequent, it was new level of success. Oh, new level of success, new level of success. But I got to experience each of those, and I'm like, that wasn't twice as good feeling. That wasn't 3 times as good a feeling. Having twice as expensive of a house doesn't feel twice as good. And so I knew, the things I'd read as a young, right, were like King Solomon, who had more money than anyone in the history, like a trillionaire, back in the day. And all the businesses, all the power in the world, all the women, all the, everything, right? And he said chasing that was like chasing the wind. And I got, in my own little way to thankfully experienced that early on. So I had to go deeper and realize like, all right, what is my true calling and my true purpose and why am I doing all of that? And so that led to deciding and coming up with this, stand of who I am, and then, some pretty radical decisions along the way in pursuit of what I feel like God's calling is on my life.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've seen, right? Having businesses with purpose, that usually happens when the founder or the entrepreneur at the heart of the business is somebody who has purpose in life, who's found one core calling, and then they want an organization to augment that into the world and then help others, possibly help others, and then and the money making part is just a side part of it. It's just a byproduct
Yep.
that comes out of helping other people. Have you felt that?
Totally. Yeah, you're totally right. And what's cool then is like when you're a startup like me, I don't have the budget to like pay people what they're worth. I frankly don't.
Yeah.
My team is worth way more financially than what I'm able to pay them. Now, as we grow, trust me, they're getting rewarded along the way. And I'm leading the front. Like I haven't had a paycheck in 21 months, right? But what you do get is people that are there because they want to be and because they're aligned with the purpose behind the company.
Yeah.
And that's so much more powerful. And one of the things I've hated is we lost a lot of people along the way where maybe they did just do it for the paycheck and they were sorely disappointed. And the purpose, maybe they weren't as aligned with that and we didn't vet that out as much. Or some phenomenal people, but the needs of the business changed and the direction that we were moving changed. And unfortunately, there just wasn't a fit for that. So I feel grateful that I've gotten to lead and have so many great people a part of our organization along the way. But, I wish we've been able to keep everyone, and it just hasn't worked out that way.
So what kind of work are you doing? I see helping top companies recruit
Yeah.
talent on your background. So is that what you're doing, trying to help build teams of the people?
Yeah, so we've been figuring out, you hear all the advice of like, pick a niche and stick with it and make it narrow, don't go broad. And like I promised to like follow all of that wisdom when I started the company, and it just didn't. We were just too broad. So we've just been narrowing and narrowing and narrowing and narrowing. And so now we help independent wealth management firms, founder led, from 5 to 100 employees, doing 2 million to 100 million a year in revenue, where they're in growth stage, where the founder is working on or has recently moved in from an advisor position to a CEO position, and they're building a company. And our job is to help get them the talent that they need to continue to scale and grow that company. So as narrow of a niche as that sounds, it's probably those services, those companies that fit that niche are paying about $1.5 billion a year for those services. And there's not a single key player in it. And so we're in that to own that space.
I mean, that is very correct. Actually, I love the fact that you have so much clarity on who your exact customer is and who you want to serve out in the market. It's better to not go after 100, 1,000 customers and get a little from everybody rather than find that one customer who's willing to pay you $1 million for your service. That kind of clarity is what I love. I mean, that is something that is not visible with a lot of founders. And do you see any reason for that? I mean, I guess it took you a lot of time to come to this clarity. And what stopped you probably in between getting to this?
Yeah. So when I first built the company, the purpose of the whole company is to create something that has $1 billion of enterprise value and sell it and take all of that money and fund missionaries in the hardest parts of the world that are sharing the gospel. So, with that in mind, right, we want to build a phenomenal company where our employees are paid the top 10% of the industry. They work from home, so they get to have robust family lives. And we provide elite service to our clients more expensively than average, but significantly faster and significantly better customer experience. So along the way to all of that, one of the key things I thought was like, we need to have recurring revenue. So I built a company and a model around recurring revenue. I made 2 mistakes though. I didn't go after checkbooks that could afford it like they needed to. And the solution that we provided was one where human nature just said they were never going to be satisfied in what we were giving. We were essentially providing recruiting leads instead of recruiting placements. And so I shied away from the standard model of where we charge upfront and success fees on the back end because I wanted
Yeah.
recurring revenue. But what I learned over time was, that's great, but you're a startup and cash flow is important. And so, if we can do the latter model, you can get a year's worth of cash flow in a month. And we had a few successes of that. And so it took me a little while to abandon this idea of recurring revenue and just go after, I need revenue and I need to be able to quantify our success too, where we get paid when they hire someone that they think is a great fit for their organization. And that gives a quicker feedback loop for us to be able to continually improve. So it took a while to get there, and that was the journey along the way. We learned a lot of really good things along the way, but now that's how we've arrived at that ideal client profile.
If you had to tell somebody, okay, who's starting out a business, right, and who's trying to create a team, okay, since you're helping others create teams, I want to ask you about what would be your suggestion, one suggestion to some founder who's going out to create a team for himself or herself.
Yeah, so a couple things. Here is my mentality. So beginning at the end in mind, right? What is your goal? Do you want to build a lifestyle company? Do you want to be the CEO of a well-renowned company that everyone wants to work at? Or do you want to have an exit event? And so that's going to dictate your decisions in building a team and how you structure it. So for me, knowing that I wanted to exit, right, I knew that I had the luxury of knowing, like in my past, my time was worth X, $100 or $1,000 an hour. And so I had to quickly scale myself to where day one, like I was doing $10 an hour work and $10,000 an hour work and everything in between. But as soon as humanly possible, I had to replace everything I was doing with a person or a technology.
Yeah. Yes.
And so keeping an eye and knowing like technology, what I could use, and then knowing what I could afford, right? So my first 10 hires were all international. And so whether that was the Philippines, whether that was India, whether that was Pakistan, I mean, we had team members all over the world, Colombia, and that's just kind of continued to develop.
Okay.
And so with that, we then have hired American people and then I brought a partner on. And so, it's really doing the job yourself first with the mindset of doing it in a way that you can systematically hand that off to somebody. So it's like you're creating the SOP while you're doing it and the job description while you're doing it with the mindset of how can I take somebody, and really it was really helpful, like the mindset of somebody halfway across the world and make it so simple that they could do it, which is really helpful. I'm not saying we nailed it, but that was the kind of mindset.
That makes a lot of sense because, I mean, I've heard it from everybody who's working in business. Systems, processes have to be there for business to work. I mean, with purpose, without purpose, there are a lot of things to be taken care of, but process has to be there.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. When you say elite talent, how do you exactly differentiate? I mean,
Yeah. Right.
there's one way to do it academically. There's one way to do with work experience. What's your go-to?
It's got to be more than a marketing word, right? You got to be able to
Yeah.
quantify, especially if we're charging elite prices.
Yeah.
So I'll just quantify it numerically. So
Okay.
I have spent almost $500,000 on our data. And again, that serves the niche that I just described, right? So I have to believe I'm one of less than 5 and probably none companies that have spent that much just on getting the data right and testing the data. And what I mean by data is the candidates, right? All of the people in and around that can fill any role that serves our niche. And then as much sortable, quantifiable data, like, I haven't even done the numbers, but it's somewhere around 100 different like character traits we can figure out about them. And then pairing that with like getting their phone number and their email address, and which is expensive, and then making sure that it's right, and having access to them on LinkedIn, which is expensive and takes a long time, and then using essentially market insight data and pairing that up with that list. These two things don't go together, but pairing this to know who's quietly looking for a career move. And so then what I can do is I can take a client who says, hey, we're looking for this in this market, and I can take that database of a couple million people and I can find the top 75 people that fit
Okay.
those things exactly where they are. And of maybe, I don't know, hundreds, 1,000 that fit that. So we're already starting with the top 10%. Then we have to reach out to all of them. We're going to talk to 30-ish of them. So now we're like at the top 3%. And then we're going to do a
Yeah.
video recorded interview where we ask all of the exact questions our client needs to know with 7 to 10. Now we're at top 1%. And then we're going to give half of those to our client to take through the rest of their process. So like we're literally like the top half a percent-ish. That's how we quantify elite.
Right. Now, these elite people are using social media, as you mentioned. You go on LinkedIn,
Yep.
you look for that.
Yep.
Right. How is your LinkedIn social presence on for your company or for yourself? Are you going out talking to people about getting into these companies and then these people reach out to you? Or are you personally reaching out to them? Obviously, you are, but then
Yeah.
are they all up to you?
When I first started the company, I was doing it all. Well, that's not true. I hired a social media manager immediately.
Okay.
And his name's Carl, and I've had him for 18 months. And Carl does as amazing of a job as he possibly could with the time I spend with him. I spend no time with him whatsoever. So he just kind of figures out what our language is and what he sees me putting out there. And he just creates a content calendar. And there's no engagement. It's literally just billboards. It's great stuff. Like it looks good, but it just makes us look relevant. And that's not me. That's our company brand, right? So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, it all goes on there. And then as far as candidate and client, right? Those are the two things, right? Business development and recruiting. So day one, I had to do all of it, but very quickly I couldn't do recruiting anymore. So I built a recruiting process where I could train and have somebody do that. So our team does that. I have tried to go to market with a sales team multiple times and spent 6 figures for this much revenue. On the flip side, God has been super gracious with me and the word he's given. I have a chief prayer officer for our company, and this guy prays for our company every day. We have a prayer team of a dozen Bible college students where we pay their room, board, tuition, and they pray for our company, our clients, and our candidates for an hour every day. And the consistent word in there is connections.
Yeah.
And connections, I think it's it's a God sense of humor. That's what it's called on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
It's not friends, it's not followers, it's connections.
Yeah.
And so he prays for that every day, reminds me once a month that that's the word. And so LinkedIn and me on LinkedIn has been, our number one, coldish kind of marketing. It's a lot of relationships and referrals, but I do all my own LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm recording this right now on my phone, and I'm going to have my video guy, he'll chop it all up and we'll put it into shorts and clips and figure out the best things. And I know you're doing it. So we do a ton of that. I do all my own posts and contents every week. I have it analyzed by AI. I export all the posts and all the what's working, what's not working, what has the best. And then we tweak it every week and get better and better. What should our messaging be like? And it works.
What's encouraging people to engage with your content? Is it information, or is it on a call? Is it the call to action, or is it something that specifically special?
Yeah, I had a really good encouragement from a sales guru coach guy a couple weeks ago. And he said Steve, a lot of your posts that you're putting out there are, we're really good at this. And here's a story, here's a testimonial, here's something we did really, really good at that. That's great, but those are commercials.
Right.
He said, you would be much better served if you could speak specifically to the pain of your clients. And so a couple weeks ago, we made that shift. So we do two things. So I'll come back to that. The other thing we do is we interview a lot of phenomenal candidates that are just not the right fit for our client. And so I've started these advisor candidate alerts. And so I'll post a couple of the best people every week on there. And that's gotten some traction. And that's really nice too. It's kind of like a catalog where it will introduce us to clients that, normally we do a custom engaged search where they're like, we want this, and this, and we're going to go find them. But this is a really cool way to say, hey, we've got someone that's just like this. And they're like, I didn't even know I was looking for that, but that's exactly what I want. They get someone right away. We get paid really, really quickly. And if not, then we go do a custom search for them. So that's been really, really cool. The other thing, going back to speaking the pain for our clients, I'll tell you a story. So if you went on my LinkedIn, this was just last week. So I posted something that was a little bit insensitive. I talked about how, firms that are hiring, are posting jobs and they're just getting applicants. And I use the language, they're only getting bottom of the barrel candidates in that. And
Okay.
and the candidates they really want are working successfully somewhere else right now, but they don't have the capacity to go after and get them. And
Yeah.
spoke to how many interviews they do, and it's just a letdown every single time. So I nailed the pain, right? But immediately I had, and there's a lot of hurting people out there that I felt so bad I didn't think about it this way, but they're like, I'm not a bottom of the barrel candidate, and I got laid off, no fault of my own, and you're telling me your clients don't want me because I'm bottom of the barrel because I'm currently not employed. And I had to stop. I'm like, I took it out. I went and edited the post. I took it out. You don't edit posts, so LinkedIn hates that. But I did.
Yeah.
And I apologized. I'm like, I got nothing to say other than I'm sorry. Like, you were right. You were not a bottom of the barrel. And that wasn't right. I apologize. And I think the post was like 2,000 impressions then. Over the next 3 hours, it skyrocketed to 15,000 impressions. And I had all kinds of similar person, still pissed off about it. And they're like, hey, I'm searching for jobs. And so I went and commented all of them. Some of them I was like, like, I'm not talking about you. I'm speaking very specifically to like only a couple people in the world qualify for these firms. This is not general. I understand you're talented, but like in our industry, successful people are not looking for jobs. They are currently crushing it somewhere else. And so I'm only speaking to these couple thousand firm owners. I'm not talking, like I even made the comment, like LinkedIn did what LinkedIn does, and they spread this for controversy when in a perfect world, it would only get a couple thousand impressions to the right people. And so it was just super interesting how all the wrong people got all of that. And then overnight it stopped. I've had a couple posts go viral before where it just goes and goes and goes and goes. This was super weird. It went from like 2,000 or 3,000 to 15,000 in a couple hours. And a week later, I think it's only at like 16,000. It did nothing after that. Here's the point of my story though. The next day I got an email from a guy and he said, hey, Steve, I saw your post yesterday and we need to talk. And I'm like, all the hate on that post didn't scare you off? It was my response to him. And he goes, no, it made me know exactly that I needed to work with you and that you could help solve our problem. And it was just like a perfect full circle example of like the whole social media game and what that looks like. And by God's grace, like when it works and how it works the right way.
I mean, that's right. The algorithm works in mysterious ways, is what the internet says. And you sometimes don't know. As you mentioned, right, it went viral in 3 hours and then just shut shop. So, I have no clue why that went viral. But I guess it's the engagement, right? When you have so much engagement happening so suddenly, and then when everything stops, the post stops going out to people. And that kind of thing.
And it's interesting too. Like,
Yeah.
both of my most viral posts had a negative connotation, a negative bent to them. And I'm like, I am not doing that. I will not play that game. Because I don't want to attract people that jump into that negativity mindset. I don't care if it gets 100,000 views. Like, I don't want, and so like, I've probably sacrificed a lot of impressions because of my refusal to play that game that the algorithm likes.
Yeah, the algorithm basically likes posts in which people engage. They either like or they comment, right? And it's just that negative posts have a lot of hatred filled into it, so they attract a lot of negative or positive comments, and people take both sides. So once people take sides, they love commenting about it. So it goes that way. So it's just that I want to thank you for joining me in. And is there anything specific you want to share before sharing your contact? A specific tip for business founders or something of that sort?
Yeah, I would say a few different messages I'd like to share. I'll pick one today, right? So I think that what's helped us as a company is really having very clear values. So our values for our company are excellence, family, faith, generosity, and growth. And every team meeting we go over those. And we don't start the meeting until somebody has shared, or until a few people have shared where they've seen those values lived out in the past week or two. And I know my team, gets tired of it from time to time. I've been doing that for probably eight years now. And I just think it's so powerful in aligning and making sure you have alignment, keeping the right people in, and frankly, getting the wrong people out. Because it's uncomfortable if they don't, if people aren't sharing, like I know they're on their way out. And so I would just encourage any founder, any leader to take the time. And if you have an organization where it's not your company, but you're stewarding someone else's company, and there were people there before you, you need to collaboratively establish your value. So I've had to do that before. If it's your company, then you need to establish the values and
Yeah.
be prepared for some shakeup from that, and make sure that you really truly are going to think through and live through those. But I think, once you're done with that and you've established it and created that cadence, it's going to be that much more powerful in growing your future.
Thank you so much. I mean, that suggestion was profound, and everything else that we talked about was an insight on so many different levels. So, Steve, before we close, do you want to share any contact details that people can
Yeah,
get
so
back in
I'm
touch?
Steve Perry, the Well Recruiting Solutions on LinkedIn. I'm on there too much, but I love to connect with anybody on there. Our website's thewell.solutions. But yeah, happy to connect with anyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining in. To the listeners and audience, if you liked our conversation, do leave a like. And if you have if to relate, if you have a question, and if you want to add to this conversation, do leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe before leaving the window itself. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you.